Alice Cooper has long stood as a high priest of rock and roll, weaving through its dark, jagged tapestry with theatrical gusto and unfiltered bravado. In his decades on stage, he's encountered some of the most prodigious players in rock history, and he has a keen eye for genius, both in its refined and ragged forms. When Cooper speaks of the great guitarists, it's like listening to a priest recount saints, not as untouchable figures, but as humans who can stir something primal. For Cooper, these players don't just wield guitars, they command energy, revolution, and an audacious truth about the power of music itself. Jeff Beck, in Cooper's eyes, isn't just great, he's the definitive guitarist, the apex of what it means to be a player. Cooper's early encounter with Beck at a Yardbirds show left an indelible mark on him, and it's a memory he still holds with almost religious reverence. There was a moment, he recalls, when the rawness and energy of Beck's playing hit him like a wave, and from then on, he knew he was seeing something different. Beck wasn't concerned with perfection. He was after something far more elusive, authenticity, something fierce and primal. Over the years, Beck's sound only grew more experimental, veering from rock into blues, jazz fusion, and beyond. His touch was surgical yet visceral. He'd bend a single note, and you'd feel it like a punch to the gut. Beck pushed the guitar's limits, making it a voice for things that couldn't be spoken: regret, joy, fury. It's that raw versatility that cements him as Cooper's greatest. Beck wasn't just a musician, he was a force, and that force was something Cooper saw as a kind of magic.
So, being the house band, big bands would come in from England, right? So we're going to open for the Yardbirds, the real Yardbirds, with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, both in the band. And, of course, we do all their songs. So we get on stage, and there's 1,000 people there, and we do every one of their songs. And they're back there, and they're giving us the thumbs up. Yeah, that's great. They get on stage and blow us off the stage. I mean, we were good. They were the Yardbirds, and it was a whole different thing. Guitar, everybody says, who's the best guitar player? This is what cinched it for me. Jeff Beck, they're playing the song. He holds his guitar like this, and it's feeding back. And he's talking to somebody. He's like 19 years old. And while he's talking, he's dropping the guitar and doing triplets.
Oh my goodness.
Perfect triplets, and catches it right on the last note where it's feeding back. And we went, what? That's impossible. You know, that was 1966. So how good is Jeff Beck now? You know, when you start thinking about if he was that good then and he only got better, that's why when people say who's the best guitar player, I go Jeff Beck.
Jimmy Page, on the other hand, is the quintessential rock and roll sorcerer, a man whose guitar work seems to crackle with ancient mystical power. Cooper's respect for Page is rooted in the soul of rock itself, raw, unrelenting, and steeped in myth. Page's playing isn't just skillful, it's imbued with a kind of dangerous allure. He can mesmerize you with a riff, then take you somewhere dark and unknown. With Led Zeppelin, Page's guitar became a portal to something far beyond standard rock tropes. Cooper has spoken about Page's command of blues scales, his ability to riff until it feels like an incantation, building suspense until the listener is practically pulled to the edge of their seat. Every chord change, every searing solo is drenched in attitude and power. For Cooper, Page is the best rock and roll guitarist because he's not merely a musician, he's a creator of worlds, conjuring atmospheres that make rock storytelling feel almost mythological.
Jimmy Page is a great rock player.
And then there's Jimi Hendrix, who Cooper sees as the most inventive guitar player to ever walk the earth. Hendrix took everything the guitar could do and turned it on its head. The stories of Hendrix playing a guitar strung for a right-hander while being a lefty are the stuff of legend, but for Cooper, it was more than Hendrix's odd technique. It was about the way Hendrix seemed to pull sounds out of thin air, defying what anyone thought the guitar could be. Hendrix's riffs and chords didn't just support his lyrics, they spoke with an intensity that matched his voice and his raw emotion. When Hendrix played, it felt like he was channeling something cosmic, an otherworldly sound that's never been replicated. His guitar cried, laughed, screamed. He used feedback, distortion, and effects not as gimmicks, but as new languages. Cooper has described Hendrix's playing as most inventive, and it's true. No one before or since has pushed the guitar so far into unknown territory. For Cooper, Hendrix wasn't just a musician. He was an architect of soundscapes that would become blueprints for generations to come. Frank Zappa stands apart in Cooper's list, not just for his musicality, but for his unorthodox approach. Zappa is Cooper's tribute to the underdog genius, a player's player, and an intellectual of the highest order. Zappa's music was a blend of rock, jazz, orchestration, and satire, pushing boundaries far beyond the standard rock structures of his time. He was deeply influenced by classical composers like Stravinsky and Varese, which lent his playing an unpredictability that was both chaotic and purposeful. But for Cooper, Zappa's appeal lies in his uniqueness, his unwillingness to conform or to bow to what anyone else thought music should be. Zappa would run dissonant scales and jump into a melody with a calculated whimsy, dissecting and rebuilding sound in ways that only he could. Cooper recognizes Zappa as a player whose technical skill and avant-garde creativity might have gone unnoticed by mainstream audiences, but not by his peers, who respected Zappa's boldness and intellect. Zappa didn't just play, he deconstructed and reconstructed, pulling apart musical conventions like a scientist in a lab. In his hands, the guitar became both an instrument and a scalpel, capable of delivering beauty, irony, and wit in every note.
Well, I'm specialized. What I do on the guitar has very little to do with what other people do on the guitar. Most of the other guitar solos that you hear performed on stage have been practiced over and over and over again. They go out there and they play the same one every night, and it's really just spotless.
Johnny Depp is Cooper's wild card, his surprising choice among the virtuosos. While Depp is better known as a Hollywood star, Cooper sees him differently within the realm of the Hollywood Vampires, a supergroup they formed to celebrate the spirit of rock's past.
And we were talking about the Vampires, and I said, it'd be great to do a little bar band, you know, and just do songs for our dead drunk friends.
On stage with Cooper and guitarist Joe Perry, Depp sheds his celebrity skin and plays like a man who lives for the music, not the spotlight. Depp's skills may not match those of Beck or Page, but his attitude and dedication are undeniable. In Cooper's eyes, that's what makes Depp a guitarist worth mentioning. He's committed to rock as a lifestyle, an art form that's larger than any career or reputation. Depp's playing is gritty, honest, and without pretension. When he's on stage, he's there to be a musician first and foremost. Cooper sees in Depp a respect for the craft, a devotion that proves rock is as much about spirit as it is about technicality.
It started out as when I was doing Dark Shadows with him, the movie. I'd never met Johnny, but I knew he was a guitar player. And we went to do the 100 Club in London that night. The band was going to jam then. And I told Johnny, I said, Johnny, why don't you come over and play? And he shows up and nailed it.
Brian May rounds out Cooper's list, bringing with him an entirely different sensibility. May is not the visceral shredder or the bluesy riff master. He's an architect, constructing vast sonic landscapes with a kind of calculated precision. A trained astrophysicist, May brings a certain intellectual depth to his playing, approaching each song like a puzzle to be solved. With Queen, May's guitar became almost orchestral, soaring through tracks with the dramatic flair of a lead character. Cooper respects May's sense of composition, his ability to weave intricate melodies and harmonies into anthems that feel like rock opera. May doesn't just play, he builds, creating structures that elevate Queen's music into something grand and timeless. For Cooper, May's greatness lies in his singularity. No one else sounds quite like him, and his guitar parts are as recognizable as Freddie Mercury's voice. May's playing isn't just rock, it's theatrical, it's profound, and it's perfectly crafted to stir emotions on a massive scale. For Cooper, these players are not just influences, they are the life force of rock and roll itself, each one contributing a different shade to the music's spectrum. Beck is the raw power, Page the mystic, Hendrix the inventor, Zappa the intellect, Depp the true believer, and May the architect. Together, they embody everything Cooper values about rock, its ability to shock, inspire, and transcend. In speaking of them, Cooper isn't just giving lip service. He's acknowledging the parts of himself that have been shaped by their music, their bravery, and their unwavering commitment to the craft. These men didn't just strum chords or pick notes, they redefined the guitar's role in rock, making it a tool for everything from guttural rage to ethereal beauty. In Cooper's view, a great guitarist isn't just a performer but a storyteller, a conduit for something primal that words alone can't capture. And that's why, after all these years, Cooper still lights up when he talks about them. For him, these players represent the heart and soul of rock, a reminder that, at its best, music isn't just heard, it's felt, deep in the gut, loud and wild, just the way rock and roll was always meant to be.